Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to another episode. This is your host, Davey Kim. Hi, Cory. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
Would you please tell us a little bit about your background and your journey founding the Croptimistic technology?
Sure, yeah. In 2003, I started an agronomy services company. Um, Very typical of agronomists, you could say, to do fee-for-service, crop scouting type work for farmers. Then in 2008, we entered the precision agriculture service market with soil mapping and variable rate prescriptions. Um, and so that continued till 2018 when we started an ag tech company called Croptimistic Technology. And it's building software and hardware to scale our SWAT MAPS brand. So it's our core foundation technology is the soil, water, and topography mapping. And this creates detailed soil type maps that can be used as agronomists for soil sampling and prescription applications of soil applied nutrients. And yeah, so we're now scaling this in our ag tech company around the world.
Yeah. So I can understand that your business on more on high level. Uh, would you like to explain the how your business model works? Assuming that I'm potential client, I'm farmers, and then can you give me a little bit of kind of elevator pitch, sales pitch to help me to understand your professional assistance?
Sure. Well, maybe I'll start with saying our business model um, isn't direct to farmers. Farmers are the end users, but we're selling the software and hardware to partners. So we call it like an agronomy service partner. It could be 1 or 2 or 10 person agronomy services firm anywhere around the world that wants to adopt these specific mapping technology. And then they would take that to a farmer and incorporate it into their existing business models. Um, so what makes it unique? Why would an end user, a farmer, be interested in this technology? Well, you could say right now that the market's very full of what I'd call single layer technologies. So you can collect remote sensing from drones or satellites, and you can collect, electrical conductivity maps of soil and all these things. But the real challenge is you have all these different map layers is to turn that into something usable that people relate to, and makes it simple and consistent. So that's what we're good at. So the SWAT Maps technology is a patented process to integrate multiple layers of soil, water, and topography information, turn it into a single map. And then this map would be very um, logical to an agronomist or a farmer because it turns into zones that they can relate to. If there's salty areas of the field, those will all be in a single zone where they can say, okay, I'm going to soil test all those areas together and I'm going to manage them the same. I'm going to cut my fertilizer, maybe add some more salt tolerant crops or varieties in those areas. And so it all makes perfect sense to them, but it's very simple. We've taken a 10-step process and we're automating and making every step efficient with data flow so that our partners and the farmers can utilize this technology, um, yeah, around the world.
Okay, so your business model basically is a B2B business. You are not selling your software hardware directly to the farmer, right?
Correct.
But I mean, even though do you sell your product and services through the other company, but from the farmer's point of view, I mean, using your software hardware, how much benefit can I get in economically?
Well, typically, I guess you could say that we're looking for the farmer to get a 10-to-1 return on what his investment would be. And that's in like what we call the annual fees. So with our technology, the first year fees are typically 3 or 4 times as much money as an annual fee, because it's like we make a zone map once, because the field never changes, right? Like the environment changes, the weather changes, the crops you grow change, but the soils don't change. So we're making this static map, and it requires like a lot of labor and mapping of the field. But once you get into your annual fees, which is like soil sampling and making prescriptions and recommendations and doing a few field checks for plant stand counts and stuff, that your price is significantly lower. And those are the years then when the producers are going to be varying their inputs, their products, changing their management to get a 10-to-1 return on investment.
Got you. I understand you recently successfully raised the money from the outside investor, right?
That is correct, yes.
Yes. So I think then let's say this is the first investment, but assuming that you have outside investor who wanna make a big bet on your into your ventures to support your growth and operations. Let's say someone want to make a 50 million US dollar into your venture. What would you do it with that money?
Well, I guess you could say we're at, we finished a seed round, we're at a Series A, and you're almost jumping to like a Series C type
Yep.
investment. So if I could fast forward through these first few years, I'd say we have a really strong presence in Canada, the northern states, because agriculture is very similar, right? Equipment's similar, crop types are similar,
Yep.
business models are similar. So for those later stage investments, I would say when you're going global, um, you have to adapt your technology and your business models to other parts of the world, and that's very challenging, because in northern Canada we have mostly like small independent consultants. If you go to say Brazil, it's all massive co-ops. Um, so we are, working on some of those what I call big ag companies today, and finding ways to incorporate our services with them with like API connections via software, and just basic learning how to work with those companies, integrate with them. So yeah, I would say we need sort of basic staff in other countries for, just to get your product off the ground, training, technical support, sales. But in general, most of the work, like even our current fundraise, is probably 50% developers. So building out the technology. So if you want automated, push button, simple, easy to use, scalable, low cost technology, like that requires a lot of work, and that's probably what most of the money would go to. A lot of it goes to IP too. So maybe 10% of the funds would go to IP, developing the technologies that we're working with. Um, and yeah, so I don't know, the last 20, 30% of the funds go to various things, right? Like marketing and sales efforts and things like that.
Outside of Canada, which is the biggest potential market for you, or the other continents?
Well, currently the United States would be number one outside of Canada. And then we actually have a staff member in South Africa. And we
South
will shortly
Africa.
have yeah,
Okay.
we'll shortly have a staff member in Australia. That's a market that's easily to get into. Now, those markets are like English speaking.
Yes.
Um, they're the more similar the agriculture is, the easier it is to transplant your technology. And business models are similar too. So those are some of the core areas we're working now. But obviously, we want to go to the larger, players like Brazil and other countries in the world where the big markets for this technology.
Is Asia very different from the other market, like the US or Brazil or the Canada?
Yeah, I would say it's significantly different. Like Like we have interest in Russia, for example, and they use a lot of similar equipment and similar farming practices. But it's just sort of a large jump for us to, as far as like working internationally in a country like that versus, the other one. So yeah, every border you try and break through, we find like different political barriers, different, like there's a big tariff on Brazil, for example, for bringing importing technology in there. So all of a sudden our cost of our SWAT box technology goes way up. So yeah, there's a lot to learn to international business for sure. So, it's kind of the easiest to work with markets, other people have gone to, people that you work with, and seems to make it a lot simpler.
I see. Okay, my last question is what do you have on top of your mind for the next step and your vision and long-term strategy for Cropmistic technology?
Yeah, well, I guess we're working with soil technologies, and let's just say that these are probably one of the they're becoming of interest to the investment community, but they haven't been up until now because the technology has lagged. It's
Yeah,
most of it's unscalable, expensive, and um, things like that. So we're very focused on this and have been for years. And so what we're trying to do is scale the unscalable. We have sort of like what we'd call a 10-step process to completing a good soil-based management system. And we're automating and scaling every single step. It's challenging, slow, um, but I feel that, many companies will be out there offering like these little one-off solutions that aren't fully integrated into like the start to finish business model. You're going to find it very challenging. I think in this case, it's like you don't need the best single product. You need the best suite of products that fully integrate with people's software around the world. If I want to go to a different market like Australia, I got to work with the software companies that are there. I can't, try and bring my own software and try and penetrate the market and compete against them. So, um, yeah, you have to be a fully integrated technology. You got to play well with the players that are out there. So, you can seamlessly people can seamlessly add all these technologies and they find it simple, easy to use, cost effective. And that's our biggest challenge is automating a scalable whole product solution that's a foundation map for the world's farmers.
yeah, and the long-term vision.
Oh,
You have run the CropPro consulting almost to 2 decades, right?
yeah, I guess, I mean, the long-term vision for Croptimistic technology is, yeah, like I said, to build out these technologies. So, I mean, have a 50 million revenue company in 5 years,
Mm-hmm.
that type of thing. So, I mean, that's a pretty aggressive um, target for us. But I mean, that's the type of thing where it's like once you're into this game, you got to find ways to scale things quickly. And, I think that that's what we're trying to do is to, you know, in one side of the equation, you're building all this technology and make it scalable. And on the other side, you got to figure out how to do business with the
Right,
fragmented market across the world. So,
right,
say those two things need to happen for our dream to become a reality.
right. Sounds to me that you're a very conservative person. To compare as compared to the other entrepreneur, usually other entrepreneur has a huge dream. So whether it is a realistic or not, but investor raise a doubt about that, right? But how did you successfully raise money being so conservative like that?
That you need to have a good balance, right?
Right. Agree.
Like ag
Agree.
tech, as much as there's companies that have raised big money, that isn't the measuring stick for me, right?
Mm,
I don't care if you have a $1 billion valuation. If you're losing 50 million, $100 million a year and you don't have traction in the market, right?
mm,
So like we've been the opposite. Like we have good traction. Like we have millions
Yes.
of acres already. We have good partnerships. We have business models that work. We have technology that's like accepted in the market, and we have never lost money, you know. So as much as that's
Right.
maybe not like what
So,
people want to hear, when it comes to ag tech, it's farmers in this industry are not adopting technology as fast as other industries. So you've got to be a little bit careful with thinking you're just going to, you
yes.
know, be a hockey stick growth, because
Right.
it hasn't happened with any ag tech company that I've seen successfully in the world. So, um, yeah, agriculture is a little bit different market. You
I
gotta,
understand. But
you know,
I recently saw that some agtech company in the South Africa or the some somewhere in Africa they raised the huge money, got a valuation something like a 200 million US dollar. Using drone, they have developed the software. They got a huge. Right?
yeah. Well, I guess in some ways, what we are doing is unique. It's so, I mean, that's kind of what gives us advantage in the market. Is there's really not many people chasing the business model and the technology that we are. So.
Mm,
I expect a few years from now, this conversation is going to be quite a bit different. So
yep. Yes. Okay. Thank you so much for taking time and introducing your the interesting the entrepreneur journey and then all the good things about your business model.
thank you so much for having me, David. I enjoyed
Thank
this
you.
time. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much for listening to this episode. Don't forget to subscribe to the podcast, share with a friend, and drop me a review. Goodbye.